My talk today will be on socially interactive robots that do not just accomplish a task, but in addition engage in a natural conversation with a user that is inspired by a human-human communication. And today I will focus on how to personalize human-like behaviors for a robot. To quickly introduce myself, I show you a number of examples from national and international projects we conducted in the past. And I started to work on virtual agents actually in the early 90s of the last century, so a long time ago. And I'm still continuing this research, as you can see on this slide. There is an obvious overlap with the robotics area, but it's still a bit easier to create expressive behaviors for virtual agents than for robots. Maybe not anymore after I have seen the very impressive pictures in the presentation by Jérôme. On this slide, you see a healthcare advisor, Christina. So this is an agent that interacts with older people and gives them advice on healthcare. We are currently developing a coaching assistant for psychological support that is running on the user's mobile phone. The agent is not supposed to replace a human therapist, but actually to serve as a kind of embodied diary for the people when they are in their daily environment. We used a lot the Redi robot because it was very robust. You could leave it in the home of people without any interventions by the technicians. And also the cartoon-like appearance was quite attractive. And currently we are working on the Viva robot together with the company Navel Robotics. The robot was developed in a project funded by the German government, so in the last 3 years. So first I would like to talk a little bit about the simulation of social behaviors and why is that important. So if you look at this picture, we just see the silhouettes of people, but nevertheless we have the feeling we know a little bit what is going on. Here we have a couple, they are engaged in a conversation, and the man on the right tries to attract the attention of the couple and he makes an arm movement. And so we express a lot of behaviors by our nonverbal behaviors. I was at a workshop organized by Honda, and I think they had a very good vision of the future of social robots. So the robot should not replace, in the ideal case, a human, but it should be integrated in a group of humans. And if you integrate or really integrate a robot in a group of humans, it is often necessary that the robot interacts as we are used to it. So our vision is that of a social resonance in human-robot interaction, which is lively autonomous behavior that is perceived as responsive, empathic, adaptive, cooperative. And what is the most difficult part of it is the real-time dynamics of this interplay. So it's already very difficult to coordinate the behaviors of the robot, but to align it to the behavior of the human is really a great challenge. I like this artistic picture a lot, so it's not a real robot. And the robot here on the picture looks like a robot, like a machine, but nevertheless you have the feeling that actually it's very human-like because it's not just serving coffee. In addition, it is sharing eye contact with the human. And the anecdote Jérôme told us, when all the nows were looking at him, it really shows that gaze is very important in human-robot interaction. So I mentioned the Viva robot, and it's based on an architecture that's quite complex. We need, of course, technology for sensing human affective and social signals. Usually in the projects I showed you, we are responsible for that part. Then we need technology for synthesizing and adapting behaviors, but the part in the middle is also very important. Actually, I won't talk about it today, but it might suffice in the beginning that you mirror emotions or respond to social behaviors, but at some point the people also expect some understanding. So what we need is an effective theory of mind. I will play you a short video of the Viva robot, and basically you just see in the video the gaze behavior of the robot. It was very difficult to realize, and we are still working on it. And just to give you an impression.
Hi, Flo, alles klar bei dir?
Jo, danke, bei dir?
Danke, alles gut. Willst du was mit mir spielen?
Nee, danke, ich muss noch arbeiten.
Oh, du Armer. Dann viel Erfolg. Ciao.
Ciao.
Okay, so it's German, but I think you get an idea, and the focus was on the face anyway. And I would like to talk a little bit how to personalize socially aware behaviors. So already when working on the virtual agents, when the people saw them for the first time, they found them quite engaging. But unfortunately, when the novelty effect was gone, the people actually lost interest in the agents. And so we thought, is there a possibility to adapt the agent or the robot to specific characteristics of the situation or the user? And there's a lot of work in the literature on personality. And I think yesterday already somebody mentioned that people usually prefer for healthcare an extrovert female robot, and for security service an introvert male robot. And the personality of the robot seems to play a more important role than its gender. But there are also a lot of conflicting results in the literature. So some studies indicate that persons prefer robots with a similar personality, and other studies show that the preferred personality depends on the context of the task. Also, it would be very odd if you give a robot to people, if you ask them to do a personality test first. And so because of the many unclear influence factors, we thought about learning preferences. And the approach we implemented and tested is based on reinforcement learning, so to produce a self-improving multimodal behavior. And over time, the agent learns an optimal policy, how to converse with the user in which state. And the tricky question is, of course, what should go into the reward function? And because we had all this technology to analyze the user's social and affective signals, we thought, okay, maybe we can implicitly adapt the robot based on social and affective signals. So there is a nice overview by Al-Khali and Kluti on reinforcement learning approaches in social robotics. So they distinguish between interactive reinforcement learning, where the reward or guidance is based on explicit or implicit feedback, and we focus on implicit feedback. Then intrinsically motivated methods, where the robot tries to maintain an optimal internal state. And finally, that's maybe the easiest kind of approaches, task performance-driven methods. So here, the goal is to maximize the robot's or the human's task performance it's easier because here we have a clear evaluation criteria. And the question now is how to design a robot based on socially aware reinforcement learning. So here are the three basic steps. So first of all, you have, of course, to model the problem. You have to think about the states of the robots and the actions they might take, and most importantly, the reward function. And one basic question is actually the adaptation speed. So you might think, okay, it should adjust as fast as possible, but it would not be very realistic if the robot jumps from one extreme conversational style to the other, and also personality does not change from 1 minute to the other. So the adaptation speed is decisive. Then what should go in the reward function? Should we actually rely on explicit feedback, which is actually clearer and easier to analyze, or implicit feedback? And the next step is actually when we have a model of the problem, how to get the data. So it's not feasible to give a robot to people and tell them, okay, you have trained it for several weeks and interact with it until it shows a kind of reasonable behavior. So you need a useful or nice basic version. And here you usually rely on simulation. So you have to actually simulate a user, which is also a challenge. So what characteristics should go into the user model, and you need this for parameter tuning. And for the evaluation, you might rely again on simulations, and you do not only have to simulate the robot and the human, but also the environment. And if you rely on noisy, or if you rely on implicit user feedback, you also have to simulate noise. For example, noise resulting from the environment, but also noise resulting from users that are not very expressive. And on this slide, you can see an overview or criteria that you have to consider when you decide should the feedback I use for the adaptation be explicit or implicit. So explicit feedback is actually very reliable, but it costs a lot of effort, and it might distract the user from the actual interaction. So you cannot ask the user every time, how was my behavior, is it okay, should I change, or whatever. It would completely destroy the conversation. Implicit feedback is more convenient for the user, but there are also some issues with the privacy and the danger that the user is manipulated without actually noticing it. So we tested this approach in several scenarios. So we tested it to adapt the language style, to have a robot that is more direct versus a very polite robot. We used it to adjust the humor, so some jokes are not the taste of everybody, and also to adjust proxemic behaviors. And we tested it in the house of older people over a longer period of time. And since we could not actually force the people to interact every day with the robot, we had to make the robot more interesting to them. So we had to implement a lot of activities, which is not, research, but we have to do it to keep the user entertained. So we implemented games, jokes, recommendations on hobbies, relaxation, physical exercises, news, weather forecast, chat functionality, and so on. And the robot stayed in the home of the people. And while it was staying with the user, it was adjusting to the user's preferences. So the users did not actually indicate their preferences. They did not say, okay, I would like to have a more polite style of communication. It was done all in an implicit manner. And so what we found out is that most users actually prefer the role of an assistant versus the role of a companion. Also for the users, it was important that the system was, or the robot was very explicit, that it was actually following what the goals of the robot are, and the users actually did not prefer the robot to tell them, okay, our shared goal is that you engage in more physical exercise. And for the games, the users prefer the role of the mentor as opposed to the role of an opponent, which is in line with the literature, because older people are usually no longer interested so much in competition. So this was work on how to adjust a robot on individual users. And next, I would like to present a completely different approach where we investigated, is it possible to adjust a robot or an aspect of the robot to a group of users at the same time? And here we focused on the personalization of robotic voices. Together with people from the Max Planck Institute in Frankfurt on empirical aesthetics. And basically, they want to know how do people perceive stimuli, and what, for example, makes a stimulus pleasant to people. And together with them, we adapted an approach they call Gibbs sampling with people to generate voice prototypes. So this is a technique where many participants collaborate to navigate a stimulus space and identify regions associated with a given semantic concept. And we actually use the approach together with them to optimize voice parameters so that they match a target, for example, to sound emotional or reflect a certain emotion. So here's the idea, here's a user, and the user gets a slider to adjust a stimulus, and then the next user and the next user, and then we actually compute the average, and this goes into the next round, and then it's repeated until we get the final result. And I show it to you here. So here people had to, so then we got the idea, okay, maybe we should try to generate voice prototypes for faces. So when you see a face, you have an idea of what this person might sound like. So if you have a person that is rather tiny, you would probably not expect a very strong voice. And so we gave the people the task to adjust a slider to make a voice match the face as best as they could. And here's an example. And we used faces from a big corpus. And we extracted all the speakers, and we also used some techniques actually to generate different styles for each phrase, so to get a larger number of stimuli. And then we used the approach I showed you. So here we have a face, and so this was, in that case, actually the original voice. And then the people actually manipulated the voice by using the sliders in several rounds, and to get, for example, this kind of effect. Okay, and I present just one result. So obviously people were focusing a lot on the gender of the person displayed in the image. And what you can see here that actually after several iterations, the space or the characteristics of the female and the male voices or the male characters are very well separated. And next, okay, we thought we could apply the approach to the social perception of robotic voices. There's quite some work on robotic voices in the literature, and usually what people do, they create voices, they present the voice together with a robot, and they ask the people how well does the robotic voice match actually the appearance of the voice, and there is the appearance of the robot. And there's a nice paper by Matthew Eilert from the Cerebroc company, and the paper actually illustrates the problem quite well. So he mentioned as an example the Cosmo robot, which was built to be cute, funny, and entertaining. And then they decided to shift to an Alexa-style assistant, and suddenly there was a mismatch between the robot's intended function and its voice. The other example he gave was Chibo, and when you have a robot, you might think, okay, the robot looks like a robot, like a machine. It should not sound too natural, but there is the problem that there is a mismatch between the unnaturalness caused by a poor speech synthesis and a designed unnaturalness that supports a robot personality. And for the Viva robot, I asked Claude Toussaint, who was responsible for the creation of the robot, what he had in mind when choosing a voice. I thought he was actually choosing a cappella children voices, but he said no. He found there is a mismatch between the naturalness of a cappella children voices and the robot's mechanical appearance. And so his solution was to increase the pitch of an a cappella female voice. And at least from my point of view, the match is done quite well. So we started some preliminary experiments for the collaborative generation of robotic voices using GIP sampling with people. So the people get presented with a robot, and the community has to actually adjust a slider to match the voice, the robot, as best as they can. And we added some specific techniques also to create synthetic voices such as a flanger and a tremolo. And here you can see first results. We still have to improve the speech synthesis, but I guess it gives you some idea. So we have on the left-hand side a robot and the right-hand side a different robot. And so this voice sounds mechanical, but a bit female. And this sounds more male. So we still have to work on the speech synthesis, which is in that case more difficult than doing the approach for humans. There are, of course, some ethical considerations. So the question is always, should we exploit or avoid stereotypes? We might want to optimize human-machine interaction by the targeted exploitation of stereotypes and customize to user experience preferences. But on the other hand, we have all these discussions with stereotypes that are promoted or amplified by AI technology. I gave a talk on this actually at a workshop on care, and I was wondering if somebody only has 3 months to live, and is that the right point in time actually to educate the guy and tell him your robot or her, your robot should have a genderless voice? So this is really a question we have to think about, exploit or avoid stereotypes. And the other option might be that robots are species in their own right and help to avoid wrong expectations and to avoid prejudices. Conclusions, I showed you 2 approaches, so socially aware reinforcement learning to generate personalized behaviors. And this kind of studies or work provides insights on human preferences regarding robot behaviors. And the other approach is GIP sampling with people to generate behavioral prototypes by a community And this approach is useful to get insights on the social perception of robots. And the fascinating thing about this area is that when we equip artificial characters or robots with believable personalities, we also learn about what makes the human mind tick. And that's why we should not just focus on the function, but also on the behaviors of the robot. Yeah, thank you very much.